To install this routing package, quit this running development server by pressing Ctrl C here, and then run npm install --save vue-router. This is another package developed by the official Vue team, so it's an official package, which you can add to your Vue projects to add this routing functionality. Now this will install this package, and once you're done installing it, you can restart your development server with npm run serve, but now we'll be able to add routing to this application. And what does this mean, add routing? Well, now we can go to main.js, where we create our main Vue app, this single app which we have here in the end. And on this app, we can now register this router which we just installed, and more importantly, the routes we want to have in this project. So simply the different URLs we want to support. And to do that, we need to import something from vue-router, so from this newly installed package. And this something is a function, create router. So we have create app from Vue to create a Vue app. We have create router from Vue router to create a router for such an app. We can now create the router here, for example, simply by creating a new constant. Router sounds like a fitting name, and calling create router and storing the result of that call in this constant. But create router needs some configuration now. It needs to know which different routes, so which different URLs we want to support, and we can also set up more things. So for that, you pass a JavaScript object to create router, and in that object, we now got two important options which we can set. The obvious important option is the routes option. Here we register all the routes, the different paths, the different URLs, you could say, which we want to support. This will be an array because typically it's not just one route which you want to have in your app. If that would be the case, you don't need a router. So we'll have an array full of routes in here, and I will come back to this route config in just a second. But there also is another option which we should set, and that's the history option. Now, that is basically telling the router how to manage the routing history in this app. So when a user clicks somewhere, goes to a different page, then this new page is added to the browsing history, you could say. And if the user then clicks a back button, the history makes sure that, well, the router knows what the last page was. And there are two different kinds of history you could use here. And we want to import another function from Vue router here. And that's the create web history function, which we then call here as a history option. Now, this might sound confusing, but historically, JavaScript in the browser wasn't always able to manipulate the browser's memory on which page the user is on and where the user came from. Therefore, historically, the router had to emulate this behavior, you could say, and we didn't use the built-in browser history. But since a couple of years, this is no problem, and with create web history, by calling this function, we tell the router, hey, just use the browser's built-in mechanism for remembering where the user came from, and so on. And that's in the end what we're telling the router here, use the built-in browser support. Simple as that. Now that's all we gotta do related to that. Now we can focus on those routes, because that's the heart of the router. Here we'll be able to tell the router which Vue component should be loaded for which URL, because ultimately that will be our goal. We want to load the teams component, let's say, when we're on our domain/teams, and we want to load the users component, let's say, when we are on our domain/users. So let's work on registering routes and loading them next.